Hello and welcome to episode 8 of Inner Ear Secrets. Time flies. Can't believe we've made it this far to our last episode today. How are we feeling, girls?
I mean, I just didn't expect it to go this quickly, and I didn't expect to enjoy this process as much as I have. I think it's been such a gift to talk to you two about all the stuff we have and have all the conversations and have our guests on as well. But I definitely think this is more of a goodbye for now situation.
Yeah, this is just season 1.
Precisely.
Yeah, and I think I'm really excited if we come up with a season 2. Yeah, I didn't think, like Audra said, I didn't think I would enjoy this as much as I did. And honestly, even as we're doing these episodes, I keep thinking of new episodes. I'm like, oh, I think they would find this really interesting. So yeah, I hope that all of you have enjoyed everything that we've put out so far. And I hope that you really enjoyed today's episode because it's titled really fun, Grandparents Speak 101.
Exactly. So today we'll be discussing effective communication strategies for people with hearing loss. Whether you have hearing loss or you're speaking to someone who does, such as if you have a grandparent that does have a hearing loss, we've got tips and tricks to help. So that's diving. I don't know about you guys, but I've got a grandma that is quite struggling with hearing, as I've mentioned many times now. So for all of our grandparents that are having some trouble hearing, like my grandma, let's start with some strategies to help. One of the most important things is to feel comfortable asking for repeats. How many patients have you girls seen in clinic that say they just sit back and let the other people talk because they can't hear clearly?
Too many times. It's the classic kind of response you get from people when you're asking, are you having trouble with conversation? Or in what situations? When we're making goals for people, a lot of times they just say, I don't say anything. They don't ask for the repeats because then it becomes obvious that they have a hearing loss.
Yeah, I've had a similar experience as well in clinic. A lot of the patients that come in, they tend to withdraw from conversation. A lot of them don't feel comfortable telling others that, hey, do you mind repeating what you're saying? Because I guess they feel like it's a disability, but I don't think that's what it is. It's just, even, as a young person myself, I still ask for repeats all the time. We live in a noisy world right now. It's so normal to ask for repeats. So yeah, sometimes I'll tell patients, I myself ask you for repeats sometimes. There are people out there that don't speak clearly. So yeah, don't be afraid to ask for repeats, guys.
Exactly. It's important to first let others know that you have a hearing loss to begin with. You can do this by simply being direct and clear with your needs, such as saying, I'm sorry, my hearing is not very well. Could you speak a little bit louder for me? Being open about your hearing loss can actually make a big difference. Most people are understanding and willing to make adjustments once they know. So if you're in a situation where you are struggling a bit to hear, just letting the other person know that, you do have a bit of a hearing loss is the most important step to take and to begin with.
Yeah, and like Sarah said, don't be afraid to ask for repeats if you miss something. You can even be specific about where you're asking for repeats. So you may have only missed a portion of it. So you can say things like stating the parts of the sentence that you didn't catch. So I like saying, you're saying about going to the beach. Which beach was it that you said you were going to? Something as simple as that, just getting the part that you really need can make a difference to your understanding. Yeah.
Yeah, I 100% agree with that. That way, you can show the other person that you've been following along with the conversation, and then you just get the part that you need.
Yeah. And another really important thing to remember is positioning yourself as well. It's a good idea to always make sure you're facing the person you're trying to listen to so that you can have the additional cues of lip reading as well to help you better understand what they're saying. And it's actually quite surprising how much we rely on the nonverbal cues as well. So even with us that have normal hearing, sometimes in a noisy situation, we would also be relying on lip reading and gauging what the other person is saying from there.
Yeah, exactly. And if you say you have a better ear, trying to sit in a position so that people that you are trying to listen to are on your good side can be really helpful to you. So just making sure that you're aware of your spacing and your surroundings is probably really key in letting you hear better.
Yeah, and here's a little tip for those wearing hearing aids. It'd be really helpful that when you are in a noisy environment to have the noise behind you rather than in front of you. So if you're in the position where the noise is behind you rather than in front of you, your hearing aids can focus better on the conversation that you're trying to have.
Yeah. And another point that I want to mention as well that many people also tend to forget is the distance. Naturally, everyone will struggle when speaking at a further distance. If you already have a hearing loss and you're trying to listen to someone, say, from 2 meters away, you are going to struggle a bit. So imagine sitting at a big table on two ends and trying to follow the conversation. Given us with normal hearing, will struggle quite a bit. So make sure to sit or stand closer to the person you're trying to have a conversation with. Or if it's your partner at home, you can get them into the habit of coming into the same room to talk to you rather than yelling from a different place in the house as well. So, yeah, all of these strategies should be able to help better following the conversations.
Yeah, I feel like this is a really big issue that we have in clinic where people are like, my partner keeps yelling from that other room and I can't hear them. Yeah, it's a very simple solution. Just come into the same room, face them, tap them on the shoulder, let them know you're talking to them. Yeah, that just solves a very big issue.
Yeah, and making sure even the lighting is bright enough for you to have a good view of people's faces. This is going to help with how well you're going to be able to lip read and getting facial cues and getting body language as well. All of it's going to add up and help. So, Sarah, will a hearing aid alone help fix all our issues in being able to hear clearly?
That's a great question. That's a question that we get a lot in the clinic as well. Unfortunately, the answer is no. We rely on many cues to understand speech. So, as we have discovered earlier, it's not just our ears alone that are going to help us hear. We've got all these other things that help us.
Yeah. Do you guys remember that sound clip that was going around a few years ago where it was either saying Yanny or Laurel?
Yeah,
Oh my
it was,
God. Yeah, I
yeah.
remember.
Okay, wait, this one.
Laurel, 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 Laurel.
What do you guys hear? I hear Yanny.
You hear Yanny? I feel like I can switch between them. Sometimes I can hear Yanny, sometimes I hear Laurel, but even as I'm listening, I can choose which one I'm listening to. So I do hear both.
Mm.
What about you, Sarah?
No, I just hear Yanni.
You hear Yanny?
Laurel, 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 Laurel,
Wait, that's
Laurel,
so weird.
Laurel,
I'm hearing Laurel now.
Laurel,
I can't hear
Laurel,
Yanni.
Laurel, Laurel,
I think if I
Laurel,
concentrate and if I think
Laurel.
I'm hearing Laurel, then I'm hearing Laurel. But otherwise it's Yanny.
Ah. Yeah, well, if we had context cues to go with that, we'd know what was actually being said. And you can find so many examples of this online. But yeah, I think it becomes quite obvious if I say that's Yanni and if I say that's Laura, and you would be able to tell.
Mm.
So interesting, isn't it?
Mm. Yeah.
Definitely.
Wonder sometimes. Are there ever instances in my life or your
Yeah.
lives where we're hearing something and we get it completely wrong just because we're not looking at someone's mouth?
Absolutely. There's another example, like from a few years ago. I don't know where I saw this, but they say that the way that your mouth moves when you say colorful and when you say rainbow, if you're not listening and looking, you actually could easily confuse the two words. So if I say,
Mm.
so just watch my mouth, this is for people that are
Mhm.
on YouTube are going to be able to participate in this a lot easier. If I say colorful, right? And then I
Mm.
say rainbow, and now I'll do it without sound, and you tell me what I said.
I don't know.
Ah.
Was
No,
it colorful?
no, I said rainbow.
Oh,
And now I'll do another one.
I don't know. I can't tell. It
Ah.
looks like rainbow maybe this
Oh, I said
time.
colourful that time. So
Yeah.
even sometimes as we're looking, it can be wrong. But I guess that's where context cues come in.
Yeah.
That's where you definitely need the context.
Okay, so I guess we'll move on to the next topic now because so far we've talked about how grandparents can help themselves. But the next question I want to ask is what can grandkids do to help?
Good question. I think first of all is to speak louder and slower. I think our grandparents sometimes might even ask us to speak louder, speak up, speak a bit slower. This gives the person with the hearing loss more time to process what you're saying. It also helps in making your speech clear as well. So it gives more clarity to your speech.
Just be careful not to overdo it. I think it's very easy to really, if someone says speak slower, your immediate response is to really speak slower. That's not what they're after. But, like they don't want you talking too fast. I think over the phone and things, we have a tendency to just say what we need to say and put the phone down. Speaking a bit more clearly, maybe choosing words that are simple to understand and maybe words that they use in everyday life would be really helpful. But yeah, just try your best to find a happy medium in there.
Does anyone want to give like an example? Because I know in class they gave us an example of how to speak slowly correctly. Do you remember that?
They did?
Yeah,
They
I'm
did,
like questioning
guys.
this. I don't remember this.
They did. I think it was in our first semester. Someone said, like, speak clearer and louder, but don't speak too slow because it makes the other person feel like you're dumbing things down for them.
Ah,
Do you remember that?
Uh,
I remember that so clearly.
very vaguely.
but that makes a lot of sense to me actually.
Mm.
It's like when people think other people don't understand English and then you slow it down, but actually they can understand it
Yeah,
fine. You just need to speak
exactly.
clearly.
It's not that they're intellectually challenged. It's just they can't hear you, that's all.
So instead of talking like, hi, my name is, that's really hard to understand. Just like increase the volume a little bit, enunciate better. Like, hi, my name is Sarah. That kind of thing. Make the words more distinct, I guess.
Yeah, precisely.
Yeah. And another thing to remember is don't shout. Definitely speak up, but shouting can actually distort the sounds and it makes it harder to understand. So just speak in a normal, clear tone, like Sarah just demonstrated before.
Yeah, it's like Audra mentioned before as well. Always face the person directly and avoid covering your mouth when you're speaking.
And another thing to remember is that sometimes certain words are harder to hear or understand than others. So for the people that are not quite following you, you can try rephrasing the sentence as well, which gives the listener a better chance of catching the meaning.
Yeah. So, for example, instead of repeating a phrase such as, do you want coffee? You could say, would you like a cup of coffee? So, very similar in what you're asking, just changed it up. And even making the sentences shorter can help immensely. Just saying coffee with the right intonation might be enough for someone to effectively understand you. We have to keep in mind that with the plethora of ways a hearing loss can present itself, sometimes even this can be difficult. Even with the enunciation, they might miss parts of where you've stressed and at which pitches you stressed at. So sometimes this is a bit difficult, but seeing what works best for the person that you're communicating with is probably the best way to go. And we do this in the clinic all the time, actually. We try and shorten our instructions because, one, we don't want to confuse people, but we're also a lot of the time dealing with people that have hearing losses. So that's why it is important to keep things short, keep things as general as possible in our language as well. That's what we do in clinic, and you can apply that outside of clinic as well.
Yeah, these have been really simple and like really good tips that all of you can take away and help your communication with whoever it may be. Obviously, we're more familiar with our grandparents, but there are other people out there who are younger, who are, I don't know, slightly different from who you wouldn't expect to have a hearing loss. These strategies with them is really helpful. And even with normal hearing people, like why not make communication slightly easier?
Yeah, exactly. I'm curious though, are there any communication strategies that we've learnt in class that you were either surprised by or didn't know about before you started the degree?
I think the fact that surprised me the most is when they teach to us, it kind of felt like it's common sense that you need to shorten the distance, speak louder, speak slower. But when in reality, when we're speaking to someone who's struggling to listen, we often don't take that into account. It's sort of looked over at.
Mm.
So I think it's just how easily we can help them, but yet most of the times we're not actually implementing that before we, studied audiology. It's something that I found that was quite interesting.
Mm.
I think for me, like Sabrina said, nothing was too surprising and pretty simple to implement. But yeah, again, had no idea that I wasn't doing these things to begin with. So my grandma has a hearing loss. I don't know what hearing loss she has because she doesn't want to see an audiologist. I've got to convince her. Like once I start working, that'll be my goal. But
Just waiting for you
yeah,
to test her.
exactly. I'll be the first one to test her. But yeah, with my grandma, I remember one day we were at home and then we were talking with it was just my mom, her and me. We were just talking and then we changed the topic and my grandma was still talking about the previous topic. So she completely missed the point. But you know what's funny? She was like, how would I explain it? Like, we're talking about driving, right? So she's talking about driving cars and we've switched to driving buses, but she only caught the driving part. So she continues talking about driving cars. Does that make sense?
Mm.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, like, we learn in class about telling people, oh, we've switched topics. Like, now we're talking about this. It's such a simple thing to do, but we just don't think to do it. It's just really weird and really sad that we don't.
Mm.
What about you, Audra? Did you have any things that you were shocked by or any instances in your life where you were like, oh, I should have done that?
I think the tip about keeping the noise behind you in a restaurant, and that's with and without a hearing aid. Like if you just want to hear a bit better, keep the noise behind you and having who you're speaking to in front of you. That was probably a life-changing moment, to be honest with you. Obviously, it makes sense, but like having somebody say that out loud and then internalizing that, like, okay, that's right. Yeah, it's just one of those things like putting soft things in a room and closing up a space and making sure there's furniture and things like that. Like, I think that's something that you do think about. But the fact that like somebody had to say out loud, it's such a simple tip, but so effective. And I've got a friend with hearing loss and we're in a restaurant. She just goes, I just can't hear anybody. Well, we go, all right, like next time, let's get a corner table. Let's get a table and it's in the corner. And then,
Yeah.
it might be a bit more helpful. So it's these type of things that we can keep in mind to help out our loved ones and make sure that they are hearing us well. Yeah.
Definitely. And I think another thing is lip reading as well. I didn't know how big lip reading contributes to us understanding speech as well until we studied about the communication strategies part.
Yeah.
for sure.
And I think I always forget that, like, these little things kind of add up to a grandparent's frustration, right? Because, you always have that stereotypical grumpy old person, right? The one that's like shaking their fist down the street in the cartoons. Not being able to hear is such a big frustration, and we always forget how frustrating it can be. And it's kind of lightening that load for them, that cognitive load into process what you're saying. It might make them a little bit more cheery.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's a wrap to our Grandparents Speak 101. For our grandparents at home, please try out the communication strategies that we mentioned today. But this also applies for anyone having trouble hearing as well. Next time when you're trying to have or follow a conversation, feel free to try these tips out.
Yeah. And for all the grandkids, or if you know someone with a hearing loss, please employ these tips into practice as well.
Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. We're sad to be leaving you for now, but we know it's temporary. So don't forget to subscribe to our podcast. Make sure you follow us on Instagram and TikTok at Inner Ear Secrets Pod. And you can also find us on YouTube. Until next time, whenever that may be, take care of your hearing and keep listening. Bye, guys.
We'll miss you.
Bye. We'll miss you.
Bye.